And with us is Lauren Schafer, who heads up ventures at Startup Health, and to talk a little bit about what she learned in the 2023 investment cycle at digital at JP Morgan. And Lauren, welcome to the program today.
Thanks, Dan. And thanks for that great introduction. Happy to be here.
That's fantastic. And again, we've got Lauren's LinkedIn in the chat box. Please do connect with her to learn a lot more about what's going on, and follow her to learn a lot more about all the good stuff that Startup Health does. But Lauren, if you could just start us off with a 1-minute overview about what you do, because I've got about 55 questions for you coming up here in this small segment we have. But if you could just start off with a brief introduction of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I am our Director of Ventures here at Startup Health. I've been at the company for over 8 years at this point, about 5 of those in this current role, leading our ventures team and our investment committee as we bring new companies into the portfolio. So I get the awesome privilege of talking to founders throughout my days and leading our scouting process and the evaluation and decision-making process as we bring new companies into our portfolio. And for anyone that doesn't know a bit about Startup Health briefly, we are on a mission to improve the health and well-being of everyone in the world by organizing, supporting, and investing in a global army of health transformers. So we bring on founders and their companies as well, all solely and specifically within the health landscape, bring them into our platform for the long-term program, lots of support from the entrepreneurial coaching side, a big focus on community and peer networks, and then also a large media platform. We do a lot of storytelling for our companies and all with the goal of helping them get connected into investors, customers, team, whoever it might be. And then we have funds that we invest out of as well. We've worked with over 450 companies to date, I've personally been around for most of those, and about at this point over 3,000 startups that I've had the chance to evaluate. So I've got to see really early stage health innovation over the last 8 years, and a lot of progress that's been made.
That's fantastic. And progress is definitely the key word there. Tell us a little bit about some of the insights and some of your observations about what's happened with digital health financing over the last couple of years, and then how that's been, what you saw at JP Morgan in San Francisco a few weeks ago at JP Morgan in San Francisco.
Yeah, great question. The last few years have been a complete roller coaster. I think, going all the way back to beginning of 2020 and the pandemic, there was a little bit of a slowdown there when we were all trying to figure out what was going on. And then immediately after that, a strong surge in funding post COVID. 2021 was actually a historic shift and kind of record-breaking year in healthcare funding. Startup Health tracks healthcare innovation funding globally, and 2021 was $44 billion for that year in healthcare funding, which was double what we saw in 2020 and huge increases over the previous years. So not only that was it huge numbers, but we were also seeing a lot of mega deals. One of our portfolio companies, Devoted Health, raised a $1.2 billion deal in 2021, and just a higher number of overall deal count. So both a ton of deals happening, a ton of funding going into this space, and some larger deals as well. And then last year, kind of the opposite of that, a pretty dramatic decline in funding. It was about half of what it was around 23 billion, about half of what it was in 2021. And I think there was a lot of maybe fear or concern that healthcare funding is declining and the market is tanking. But I think we really saw it more as a kind of settling out of the market, a kind of recalibration. I think we'll look back like 5-10 years from now and see that 2021 was a huge spike, and everywhere else it's kind of steadily increased from that. If you look at like last year, 2022 compared to 2020, it's very similar. 2022, there was a bit of growth since 2020. So kind of obviously a big dramatic shift compared to 2021, but I think that had to do more with there being an outlier of that year. And then as it relates to JP Morgan, a lot of conversations about this of, okay, we just saw a huge decrease in funding in 2022. What's going to happen now? And I think what we've seen is a bit of kind of the the noisiness and frothiness of the market in 2021, and almost kind of the fear of missing out, and everyone wants to do deals and participate, just really that settling out again. I think that there's now also one of the main takeaways, and I know I was supposed to share some of my takeaways at the end, so I'll think of others as well, but one of my main takeaways from JP Morgan was that I think there's now kind of a new space, if you will, for really early stage innovation. A lot of the investors we were talking to and in the portfolio companies as well is companies that hadn't raised during that big cycle in 2021 really have the opportunity now to raise seed rounds, and they're not caught in huge valuations, and they don't have that kind of a large deal size behind them. So I think we'll see in 2023, like when we look back at the end of the year, I think we'll still see that steadily increase in funding numbers, but I think we'll see a much larger deal count and deal size as it relates to seed rounds. I think some of the later stage, that the Series B and beyond, that in general, later stage companies are always affected more by market volatility. But I think we'll really see a focus on those early stage deals again, which obviously at Startup Health is something we're very excited about.
Yeah, it is exciting. And when you were at JP Morgan, what was the sense of the energy there for you? How did you, and what did you take away from what was going on there?
Yeah, that's a good question. We talked a lot. We had a couple of team members there, and we had all had a dinner together in the last evening. And I think for the first time, we didn't go either the last 2 years. The last time I'd been there was the January 2020, and it felt like this year it was a bit quieter. There wasn't as much of the frenzied energy. For those of you that have gone in years past, you'll remember like every coffee shop in downtown San Francisco being packed. So there wasn't that much of kind of the chaos, if you will. We were able to really kind of sit down with people, both our portfolio companies, both prospective founders that we're talking to, investors, and really kind of sit face to face and have some great, deeper conversations than we have previously. So the energy itself maybe was a bit quieter, and I think JPM, it's less about the conference. We don't even attend the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference anymore in terms of its specific programming. It's more about being there that week, and there's so many other events happening, a lot of it for early stage innovation, and we love participating in those. But I think it was a chance to have a bit more of a peaceful week up in JPM than years past, and really get some quality time with specific stakeholders.
That's fantastic. And so when you look at 2023, and you talked a little bit about this earlier, and when you alluded to what you're seeing in terms of financing trends, what are you seeing in terms of technology adoption trends for 23? And where do you think which sectors, or we call it the lab vectors, the 12 different areas of whether it's like apps or digital therapeutics or algorithms, AI analytics, that sort of thing. Where in your portfolio are you seeing some of the bigger either contracts signed or exits, things like that, in terms of the different types of things happening there in 23? What do you see happening?
Yeah, great question. We see it in a bunch of different areas. Kind of two that stick out most for me, or one, and this is a very broad category, but really the focused on personalized healthcare. I think, especially post-pandemic, we've seen a lot of it, of healthcare is becoming a daily part of everyone's lives, and something that the preventative side of things, we've heard about prevention and for years now, but I think that there's technology in place, whether it's using AI or ML, to really personalize healthcare and tracking your own biometrics at home on a daily basis, being able to get real-time data of what's going on with you as a human being, and being able to measure that and treat that and manage that. So I think we're seeing a big focus on, one, how are we personalizing healthcare even more, that we have all this access to this data, but two, how is it becoming a kind of day-to-day part of everyone's lives versus, oh, I'm sick, I'm going to go, and meet my doctor, or there's a acute problem that I'm having. The other space we're seeing, and I think this is really where there's a huge opportunity, is in accessibility. We talk a lot about health equity at Startup Health. We've launched a health equity moonshot. And I think that you can easily, say this, health equity can be a buzzword, but really where is the change being made? And I think as we think both within the US and globally as well, of a really big focus on kind of back to the basics almost of accessibility and affordability of care, and what does that look like in terms of, I was mentioning before the day-to-day care in areas where that's not possible. How are we getting basic care? So those are the two things that we've seen, one, the most excitement around within our portfolio, some really exciting new solutions come out as well, and where we're excited to see what happens in 2023.
No, that's exciting. And in terms of the some of the new companies that either that Startup Health has signed, or some of the companies that you've exited, or you're looking at, you've seen exit over the last 6 months or so. Talk a little bit about some of the more exciting news that's coming out of Startup Health these days.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And we have a couple. We've seen a couple acquisitions and mergers, both within our portfolio and with outside. I think there's really an opportunity. Both we've seen this both globally and within the U.S., but an opportunity to bring together suites of solutions to create a more comprehensive platform. I also think, kind of going back to the investment piece, that's really what investors are looking for at this point. And when we think about, okay, how are we taking care of the whole continuum of care and the whole person, there's a lot of solutions that have complementary aspects. And I think also, given the market conditions as well, it's a really great way to bring companies together and create more of a lower the long-term risk. So we're seeing, we've had a couple of our portfolio companies, both in the fitness space and in the addiction space, do those types of mergers and acquisitions, and now have 4 or 5 founders that are working together and bringing a collaboration of solutions. We also are recently launched our T1D moonshot. So it's been a big focus for us, and we're really excited to be announcing some of our first companies focused specifically on type 1 diabetes. I think there's a big opportunity to go deep in certain areas. And for us, we see, if back to that previous point I was making, if we can bring together, our goal for 2023 is to bring on 25 companies focused specifically on type 1 diabetes. And if we can bring, at the end of the year, can look back and say, we have these cohort of 25 companies all focused on this one problem, really being able to prove and kind of show that we've made measurable progress in making change, whether it's a cure, whether it's management, whatever it might be. And I think as we continue to focus on type 1 diabetes, we have a lot of other moonshots in the works as well. I mentioned the health equity one previously, Alzheimer's, food as medicine. So really going deeper on specific areas and providing specific, whether it's from our end at Startup Health, specific expertise and coaching, building the community out. But I think going deeper on those areas and bringing together founders, really at the end of the day, like, healthcare is a long journey. We're not going to see solutions or answers that'll happen in months or 1 year. It's really the long-term vision, which I think, even going back to the funding piece I was talking about at the beginning of, this is a long-term gain. So one high year of funding or one low year of funding, you look back 5 years from now, we've had huge growth since then. I think when we look back in 5 years' time, we'll see that continued growth.
That's fantastic, and such a great synopsis. Lauren, thank you very much for your leadership in the ecosystem. And again, thank you for all the good work that Startup Health is doing.
Thank you, Stan, and thanks to HITLAB for hosting this.